That's all you need.
Just one.
Wow.
That was impressive.
Yeah.
Are we starting early or right?
Yeah, we're starting early. Yeah. So before I delve into the whole, okay, here's our proposed strategic plan, I just wanted to solicit questions, comments from everything that you've heard this morning, and part of this afternoon. The reason, I guess you could tell, the reason we invited these guest speakers is so that you get a glimpse or a taste of what it is that we're thinking about for future growth for VEDA. And let's take this time, and we also set aside some time at the end for that discussion, but it would be great to hear some of your original impressions.
So I love the land bank.
The land bank.
Yes. How much of that concept can be implemented without legislative approval?
I think when we reviewed the statute, we had the ability to buy property, so we were going on that as that we don't need
That was the
legislative approval.
Big hurdle. Yeah.
The, if we focus on contaminated properties, which I think is a big opportunity and I'd like to, as Matt referred to, we may need to do a technical cleanup on that
For the
exemption
exemption piece.
legislation that exempts an RDC or a municipality from liability if they're doing like a transitory or transitional ownership. So I would want VEDA to be protected in that as well, because it doesn't expressly state VEDA. I mean, it says regional development corporations, municipalities, what have you. So that would take some legislative,
But beyond that, if VEDA were to take ownership of
a different property that was not contaminated. I mean, I don't know.
you're gonna want to make sure it's clean to start with, but.
Yeah.
Our statute says we can buy and sell real property, and it also has a section that says you can set up nonprofits to meet the economic goals of the chapter. Like it's very non-specific. It doesn't say for loans or anything like that. It says to meet the economic goals of the chapter. So, and we already have set up nonprofit entities before, obviously with our four entities, but
That's cool.
doesn't say you can't.
It's a great concept, and it seems like that's a
Yeah.
perfect catalyst. I think that's in the slide deck. That was how it was described. It was, I love it. I think it's a great idea. Great concept.
Joan, I've sat through a number of these now.
Yep.
I appreciate, and I am fairly conservative, so I'm not sure I agree with, everything that's being talked about. I think we need to vet it, but just as far as exploring those opportunities where we might have shied away from before because we wanted to make sure we were status quo and conservative. I think the CHIPS program, which is an iteration, in my opinion, of TIF and St. Albans, has seen the past 15 years just tremendous growth because of the TIF program, which I don't think, certainly the state auditor didn't like TIF, but you can't deny what it's done for St. Albans. And I think that partnership, particularly with municipal leadership, is going to be extremely important going forward. So I've enjoyed this and kind of the maybe forward out of the box thinking more so. And again, I'm not suggesting I think we need to necessarily go crazy with all the aspects we talked about, but at least vetting it. And that is through the CHIPS program where I think a lot of the focus is going to be for housing development going forward. So if we're not having those conversations, we're not being relevant. And I
Right.
think the whole purpose of having these strategic plans is to make sure VEDA remains relevant going forward. And I think again, in my opinion, I'm encouraged by the group seen so far. Thank you.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you for that. And just so folks know, because on CHIP, I know the discussion was all about the procedure and what to do, what have you, but we have had a fair amount of conversations with other lenders and a few developers about their proposed CHIP applications. So we do think there's tremendous opportunity right out of the gate. Like the governor just signed 328, which gives us the right to lend to housing. And many of these CHIP deals will be, of course, by its very nature, part of housing. So, I mean, just those developers we talked to, there looks to be about 8 projects that they have kind of in the wings, if you will. There's obviously they have a lot of work to do to get everything lined up. So as Jessica reviewed, there's a lot of steps and requirements, but yeah, that's an opportunity that's right before us, whereas the other two things are a little, I'd say a little bit further into the future because there's, we have some work to do to figure out how we want to best capitalize on those opportunities.
One thing that I've been thinking about today is, to the extent that any of these activities are ones that are initiated by VEDA rather than having someone bring the idea or the project to VEDA, it would be good to think about how to engage partners in underserved and underreached parts of Vermont. That's fundamentally why people are upset with 181. I think if they really understood the act itself, it's not as big a deal as not being heard, not being appreciated. And I think VEDA would be well served to find projects in places like Canaan or in Newport or in Hardwick or other parts of the state besides Chittenden County and Brattleboro and Rutland. I think it would benefit, I know it would benefit rural areas, and I think it would benefit VEDA. But it's a matter of finding, not just waiting, but perhaps finding partners who can work with you. The land bank would work really well in a lot of small towns. In almost every small town in Vermont, we can't use in the rural areas, we can't support a VEDA, but we can support 15 or 20 jobs. That's very meaningful in Lowell or in Troy. So I would encourage that kind of thinking.
Dave, I think that's great comment.
Along with this, a new venture that I went into, I always think about the off ramp. If it's not working, how do we get off with minimal losses?
Cut our losses. Yeah.
That's what I was thinking about. At what point do you decide it's time to? It always keeps looking better and better and better. It never happens. Where do you get off?
Yeah. I think Dave's comment very much fits in with kind of this segue into the strategic plan and kind of our guidelines on, how we will go about being a little bit more proactive. That's very much on my brain. And also to just have respect for what has come before us, right? Like VEDA is doing well. So it's not like we're changing everything. It's just all about looking for opportunity. And in terms of staying relevant, we need to find those opportunities. We need to proactively pursue them, not a reactive approach. So I kept very much the same format of the strategic plan from the prior years because I think it works and I think it's easy reference. The highlighted versions are just what I've changed. I didn't change too much. There's little tweaks here and there where we said economic development finance. I put economic development programs, like just so that we could broaden the possibilities. But before even going there, I mean, just in general, when you look at Vermont, like most of the businesses, like there's 30,000 businesses or so in Vermont. And what's the stat? I think it's like 72% of them have 5 or less employees. And when you broaden that up to like 50 or less, it's like 90-something%. So Vermont's economy is really in the sweet spot for VEDA. Like VEDA could serve many. And so I think about that and I think about how what you'll see on some of the changes here is that more of a continuous learning and organization improvement. So for example, we don't know how to do VC-backed debt, or we may not know how to do property redevelopment, but by golly, we're going to learn. So it's like this idea that let's look at the marketplace. What are the demands? What is happening right now in the economy? And whether we can or can't do it right now, let's work toward a way that we either have to change statute or policy or practice in order to meet the needs. So it's a little bit of a shift, and that is what you'll see on the change on the value proposition, but it's not losing what we've already meant to people. Like I don't want this to be that, oh, we're changing everything. It's just it's a way of making sure that we're continually growing and serving the market and remaining relevant. So, yeah, I mean, I'm not going to go through each of these. I know that we've posted this since March. There have not been that many changes since March. We've been able to socialize this throughout staff. And what I learned during the last staff meeting, which was this week, that I should probably put a little bit more preamble rather than going right to the, to this very fine printed strategic plan. No, that's okay. So really, I have the opportunities here that we just talked about in terms of VC debt, in terms of land opportunities, selective redevelopment opportunities, but also a little bit more about driving legislative policy, not always just reacting to the legislature. So a good example this past session is CPACE, that's the commercial property assessment. And they wanted us to be administrator. Lovely, you know. We were like, well, let's learn what the heck it is. And then if we like it and we think it's a good idea, let's lend to it. Let's not just be an administrator. And so we drove that. We went into the legislature, asked for that, and they actually listened. Amazing. And now we have to just figure out how that would be. So that's another opportunity no one was here to talk about, but that's another energy-based opportunity for VEDA. So I think opportunities abound, getting back to that theme. And now it's like, how are we going to do it? So the second page of this is just the vision, like for the next 3 years. One of it is just full service economic development. Right, we've been primarily a lender, that's great, but we are a limited partner in these VC firms. We haven't really talked much about it. I think we want to talk more about it. We want to include information in our annual report about it, just so folks know that we are part of that process of spurring investment and economic development in the state. And then this idea, the second bullet on the 3-year vision is state of the art. We probably have 6 or 7 disparate systems, and they don't really talk to each other without some significant manual intervention. If we're going to take on this additional work, activity, broadening our reach, it's going to be imperative that we could do this in a very straight through process. And so that's going to take some investment, some more rethinking about the way we do certain things, and we really want to be known as tech forward, not that it's a disadvantage to work or that we're taking on this extra work and then we have bottlenecks. We don't want that to happen. So that's very much another goal. Retaining and enhancing relevancy, I can't overstate that. You know, we have borrowers that are getting these very quick loans that run them into trouble. I forgot the names of them, but they're Shopify and all these others that are very easy to get. And so it makes it very, very attractive. And so I think we have to be as attractive because our product is better. So it's just a question of making sure that we could deliver quickly and efficiently so that we could then deliver more. You know, if we're going to take on more, we have to have an easier way to process. And then again, just the creativity, like we're a dynamic problem solver, we already are. Let's continue to focus on that and be a partner with the executive branch and legislative branches so that we could find solutions to the problems of Vermont, right? If you look at all these league tables, Vermont ranks 49th in economic momentum. I mean, depressing, right? Depressing. We've got people leaving, we're all aging, you know, all of these depressing stats. And so anytime I see that and you get overwhelmed, it's like, okay, let's just do what we can do, what we have the power to do, and how we can make things better and more attractive. And if these small companies grow and scale, they recruit people from out of state. Like, you know, look at VEDA, right? They've recruited so many people from out of state to take jobs here. So anyway, that's kind of the vision. I'll stop there. You know, like if people could talk about it or ask questions about that, that's just kind of the good. And then we, you can't see it on this slide, but I did put in italics the changes. And almost everything is in italics. So, but it's like there are some very similar themes. It's just that I might have put a different spin on it. And the 1-year objective should align pretty much with the 1-year budget, which we'll review shortly. You know, part of Thad's presentation and also for tomorrow's meeting. I forgot to mention the indicators, right? So the leading indicators are really these quantified activities by staff. You'll see in the first in the year, I put some numbers on things like, you know, let's go and do attract like 80 new borrowers, right? So we look back and we saw the last couple of years, we've got like between 60, 70, some years a little bit more. So it's not out of the question, but it is a stretch. It's a push. And why is that? Because the more we reach, the more new borrowers, the broader our reach, better for our relevancy, the better for everybody who benefits from VEDA's capabilities. We will, of course, expand lender and referral network. We're doing a good job with that. There were a couple of new ones this year. We put a number on it, though. What about 6 new institutions to work with? And of course, always looking at our fee revenue. Are we doing the right thing? Are we charging for the value that we provide? Portfolio and risk management. I mean, historically, we've been doing very, very well. We had a few things and a few hits that you'll hear more about in presentations to follow, but maybe we need a more proactive approach there as well. And so we want to establish more of a portfolio management methodology. And some of that was a refinement of our current risk rating methodology that Sandy has been working on. And we also did a realignment of some staff so that we could further portfolio management, bringing in Thad and Pete's expertise in risk management so that we have this as an ongoing process. You know, is the risk rating at the beginning the same as the risk rating throughout the life of the loan? Maybe not, but let's just be aware and monitor that and be on top of that so there aren't surprises. I have to refer to this one then. I think that was it. Yeah, the statute is a good one, right? So we got everything we asked, just like Allison said, and again, with Allison's help, we were able to combine the back into VEDA. And we also got the 5+ unit housing capability this year. But in looking at the statute, we realized there's lots of like loan terms in statute, like the maximum we could lend and all this stuff. So we want to get rid of that because it doesn't really belong in statute. It belongs in our policy. And so that's one big thing that we're going to talk about. But the other is there are just inconsistencies. We've added on over years. We've got sub 3 and sub 5 defined, yet there's a whole other section about sustainable jobs strategy, which says basically we could do quite a lot more than what's stated in the previous section of the statute. So we need a nice clean statute, and it's like one little line here, but it's an enormous amount of work, and we'll be doing that this year. Also, state-of-the-art capabilities means that we need a pathway, we need a roadmap. How are we going to get there? It's daunting when you look at the entire operation and figure out how will we do that? And so we do want to utilize AI as much as we can. We're making some progress on that in terms of baby steps, like establish policy, you know, get some pilot testing. Let's figure out if this makes sense. So that's part of the technology and workflow enhancement initiative. Professional development communications, as one of you might have said to me, well, why is that in a strategic plan? Well, just because we want to show the increased, emphasis on it. We did do some employee feedback this year, surveys, and people definitely want professional development career path, and we want to reiterate that and develop that. And training, availability of training, making that known to all staff and to specific staff levels. So that is first and foremost. The last column is really more operational. It's 90-day task. Doesn't mean that the tasks are going to be done in 90 days. In some cases, we're establishing quarterly type of meetings and review. In some cases, we're going to embark on a project in the first 90 days. Doesn't mean it's going to be completed, but we just wanted to put it down there so that we have a way of tracking and we could report out to the board about our progress as we go along here. I've left out the lagging indicators and the financial. I'm saving that for Thad's presentation, and he goes into more depth, but the idea is we need to grow. We hadn't really had growth targets before. So we want to implement that over 3 years of 200 million in new financings. Again, looking back, we do achieve that on a pretty good basis. We're very close to that. So it's a stretch, but it's not impossible. and then capital growth as well. We are paying attention to our margins. I know in the last several years, we did quite a lot with SSBCI funding in getting the loan rates really low, but we have to look at that for the trajectory of the future. SSBCI money is pretty much spent, and so we want to have a goal of ROA of 0.58%. Improve net interest margin so that we can improve over time. So I'm gonna stop talking and just open it up for questions, comments, yeah, what some of the thoughts.
I'm not missing talking about the rocks.
Same, I had you in my
Same.
head, Allison.
Same. But I'm not the only one. No, thank you. It seems like there's a lot here that can be done. And it's exciting that it's forward thinking. And then as far as your legislative changes, they're just technical changes, right? So they'd be pretty easy.
We hope so. We hope they're gonna look at it that it's technical. I mean,
Yeah.
you know, some of the
I mean,
limits,
we're losing.
yeah. They were losing quite a few people. That could be good or bad, depending on how we look at it.
Yeah.
Our whole quasi-public persona. I mean, we're driven by statute, right? And as opposed to a state program that's driven by statute and then clarified in rulemaking.
Right,
We don't have rulemaking, right?
right,
Which is
right,
probably why they put those things in statute.
perhaps.
You could ask for rulemaking, right?
Yeah.
I mean,
I think at the origin, VEDA was funded through appropriations, I think way back.
way back.
So it made sense, like if you're gonna get appropriations from the legislature, you should have some limits, but right now, we're not asking for appropriations.
But we still have that past investment from the state that we need to deal with, right?
I'm trying to think about which. I'm trying to, only for specific programs, like we got $2 million for disaster recovery, that's 2 million.
I'm taking back, when we first started, it was influx of capital to the starting state.
Yeah,
right?
perhaps.
I think there was a sentence.
So is there something we should think about?
Yeah, so it's gonna be convincing.
Exactly like an old Vermont farmhouse that's been built on over the last 50
Yeah.
years.
Sorry, what did I?
I'd say it's gonna be convincing the legislature or the committee, whatever committee that goes through.
Yeah,
uh,
commerce.
How they can trust,
Right,
right? How they can
Right,
trust
that's right.
VEDA to
Correct.
set those parameters, because it is ridiculous to have
Yeah.
a statute, because it's impossible to ever change. It's very difficult
Yeah.
to change statute.
yeah, and so you'll see that I wrote the word consider. We're not saying we're going to, we're gonna consider changing it depending on like. We usually have pre-meetings with legislators to test the water, see what the sentiment is. We have policies in place, we have a governance structure of approvals. So, yeah, I don't know how it's going to be received, but if we're not asking them for anything,
Oh, yeah.
maybe not, right? Maybe it wouldn't be a problem, but I don't know.
The statute at the moment is specific in certain areas and not specific in other areas. So it can really hinder our ability to be nimble and act on some of these, new forward-looking, adventures we want to take. And it can really get in the way of it.
Oh, yeah, sure.
So, my hope, if I had my way, is it would basically say VEDA is set up to do economic development. It can lend to businesses in Vermont for its policy.
Yeah, we'll see.
Something that's,
Yeah, I mean-
that's simple.
Well, it's interesting, because like even our sister or brother agencies like VHFA said, I can't believe the stuff that you have in statute, that they don't have anything here. Right, so it's interesting.
So the
and I don't know
precedent has
about
been set.
ECB, But yeah, and they're all instrumentalities of the state, so I think it's just that it's an old statute. And we hadn't really cleaned it, or I don't know, I can't really speak for it, it's just, it got
I think
ended on.
trust is earned over time, right? And like, you think about, again, what people were thinking in those moments that they, tried to put their thumb on it. But it's like VEDA has worked for many, many years to create trust, and I think the trust is there. So hopefully this is the time where they'll have an appetite to
Yeah,
let you have some of that
yeah.
flexibility. So
Yeah.
I trust to keep putting more loads on us, more stuff.
Yeah. Yeah, right. They come and ask you to administer things you didn't even ask for.
I have just, can I add one other comment, just as we're transitioning here,
Yeah.
the staff talking, but it's interesting to think, been in your role 16 months. not
Yeah,
even?
April of last year.
And then
14.
many people in leadership team has changed. Sandy, you've been in your role for less than
This role, 6 months.
6 months. So just sort of when you peek under the hood, you know, as an outward facing organization, you're doing so much, but there's a lot happening internally, redeveloping, rebuilding a team and changes. And, you know, I've had the privilege of being there for some of those conversations, and there's a lot of capacity that's been built over the past year or so. So it's a great team and a great staff. So as you all start to share what you've been doing, it's just strategic plans are externally facing, but you can't do that work unless you have the strength internally. So it's a great organization that you're on the board of.
Should we have a long-term goal of getting out from under the state and be your own organization?
Whoa, boy, whoa. I like it though. One thing at a time.
I've done simple things with extension programs. We go off on our own
Yeah,
in Boston.
yeah.
Our previous treasurer would just eat 2 Snicker bars and drank her Coke. There's that conversation. Right?
Well, I mean, it depends, like, let's say this entity, let's say the property redevelopment entity, if we do that, takes off, maybe that could be separate, I don't know, you know? I mean, we, the moral obligation of the state treasurer, thank you, for a portion of our debt, but not all of our debt. And we probably wouldn't be borrowing to buy property as an example, so that might be one that's carved out, I don't know, you're thinking way ahead of me.
I'm just saying, I've seen several organizations where it's worth.
Yeah.
No longer be involved
Yeah,
with their parent company or
no,
whatever.
understood.
Yeah.
I
It's a
know.
long range goal, not next year.
Well,
not 5 years.
no, it's a great example. Like, I know Sustainable Jobs Fund at one point was a governor appointed board. And I was on the board at the time, and they wanted to do the Flex Capital Fund and become a CDFI, Community Development Finance Institution. And the Treasury, US Treasury doesn't allow that if you have government influence on your governance structure. So we disbanded the board and then re-invited people who, whatever, came back. This way Flex Capital could be this separate kind of CDFI, not affiliated with government. So there are structures, you know, to your point. Yeah, that could make sense. And that's if, you know, let's say we do want to get engaged with BC, and you know, down the road. I don't know. But there are structures we could work toward. Treasurer's office is like staring at me. Yeah, I know, but I think if we could go through, unless, I mean, let's continue talking if there's more. Yeah.
I just have one comment or question. Under the customer stakeholder partner list, should municipalities be added to that?
Yeah, probably, yeah.
And I want to make sure it doesn't fly in the face of what the RPCs do and, you know, sensitive to others.
Yeah, you're right.
But I think municipalities,
Absolutely.
even making groups, you know, I don't know if it's a select board or trustees or whomever, aware of what we do. You know, everybody knows somebody who's been touched by VEDA and so, and pushing that out.
Yeah.
Or just, especially after talking about CHIP.
Yeah,
maybe
no,
it's a good,
good
addition.
It's
I don't know.
especially a good point. I don't know how we missed it, but it's a great point, not just for CHIP, but also for CPACE, because CPACE will include, the municipality has to declare the district, that their town, a district that is capable of doing this property assessment. So I envision more municipality relationships for sure.
We love our acronyms in state government. CPACE, she was saying it.
I'm sorry, CPACE, yeah.
But I,
Commercial property assessment energy is the
That's very
acronym.
As opposed to resident.
But actually the Vermont statute is broader than just clean energy. It's also for resiliency projects, which is important because of flood mitigation projects and whatnot, but municipalities probably have zero idea that this has happened, to be honest, I don't know.
Yeah, it
What
wasn't
kind-
widely
It
disseminated.
wasn't widely disseminated and maybe we'll talk to VLCT to see if they could help get the word out to the municipalities because really without the municipality acting, there's no deal, right?
Right, I mean, oftentimes I think it's probably gonna get brought to the municipality's attention by the developer or
Yeah.
the potential borrower, but if they actually know about it when they come to
It
them.
would be
that's-
Like 10 words or fewer.
Sorry.
No. Can you describe it?
Yeah, yeah.
30 words or fewer?
So basically a property owner could do improvements. So the municipality appoints like a clean energy district, whatever you want to call it, C-based district. And what that means is that the property owner could do those improvements, either clean energy, resiliency, what have you. Finance it through a C-based lender, which we would like to be one, maybe. And then the municipality places an assessment on that property and collects that assessment, and then you get the money from the municipality. So it's a little bit similar mechanism to CHIP, but it's not based on incremental revenue.
It's almost like
Yeah.
It's like a property tax.
It's like a property tax, right? We don't,
And that
Yeah.
annual assessment is senior to all debt that's on there.
and it travels with the property. So if developers could think that this is a great tool for them. But also mitigation measures were never covered by any of the flood, largesse that the state had. So, there's opportunity there. It's just, it's a little complicated. I think 39 or 40 states have this. It's a very robust market. There are some specialized C-based lenders, so, we may be just, bumped out of the
I don't think
market.
so. I think a lot of these national seat-based lenders engage in larger projects. 'Cause
Correct.
there is a certain amount of brain damage and costs associated with, legal and things like that. So a lot of the larger projects are, the national lenders usually like the larger projects. But we're already having discussions. I had a discussion with Bob Flynn at SRDC the other day. They were looking to put in a new heating system into 60 Park Street and, it's about $1 million.
If there's a deal, Bob Flint would be.
Oh.
If he's gonna be on it, I love it.
He started educating me about.
Yeah.
this.
Excellent.
Questions for Joan?
So, maybe instead of taking a break, we can go right into Thad's presentation. Are you, you good with that?
Sure.
Because we're a little bit.
Sooner the better.
I'm gonna take. Well, because it kind of blends.
Yeah, it's not fun too, unless everybody needs a break.
We will
Later.
want to take a break right after.
Yes, right after that, we'll take a break.
No, listen to that. I'm gonna take a break after. I'll look at this. I just need to hit the restroom before mine.
Internal folks to take a break, they're probably sick of hearing. So. All right, so that's not showing up, but that's okay. Next. Here, drive it. So
Is this the right one?
it is now, yeah, the title slide was just a little. Kicked over. Now it looks good. So last year, when we were here, it was more about all the capital we have and what we're able to do. So they're showing how we're in a very strong position and have the ability to do a lot of things without having a really firm grasp on what those things were going to be. And these were the same questions asked with a little bit of an answer to them now as we're a year later. So we had asked, what's our level of growth over the next 5 to 10 years? And a lot of this is redundant from what you've already seen and heard, but maybe in a little more detail. So the plan of any operation is to continue growing every year. So we're looking at $55 million of overall activity for the upcoming year and 200 within the next 3. Both of those are increases from the current past 3-year period. And as far as growing our balance sheet, ideally, we'd like to do that as well, but that side of things is a little less in our control as we have large payoffs that have happened this year and anticipated in the near future. So that's not in our control as much as activity. Where's that growth come from? Traditional, of course, is gonna always be our focus, but we do think, as we've seen today, there's a lot of opportunity in energy, housing, the VC businesses and the property redevelopment. So. Yes, sir.
I didn't mean to stop you mid-sentence,
I see your hand.
but I did want to get a sense whether you and staff have an idea of, you said a lot of opportunity. Have you tried to quantify that over a 3-year time frame, like a midpoint? It's probably not going to be less than this, or here's if it really goes gangbusters, just to try to, add them all up and look at it.
And I think we're early enough, so it's hard to tell on any of, they're all so new that timing wise, it'll probably be in the second year before we have any real big activity in housing or the VC tax. So I think the scope, as we saw with Karen's presentation, there's 70 million in that bucket, just in their funds for the venture debt of the universe. So I'm trying to establish what that is first, and then which piece of it we can get and when. So that's the work for us going forward, is to figure out how much we think we can do. So it's, we're
In
early
process.
in that, but yeah, I think ideally we wanted to set a number out there that we thought was attainable, but the pieces are still to be
Yeah,
quantified.
we do think that the housing, especially on the infrastructure side, these are gonna be larger loans. So it may not be the early part of the year, but maybe tail end of 27 by the time they start drawing on things, or maybe it's 28. It's hard to tell.
And from a strategic point, it might not need to be a closing measure.
Yeah,
Be more more on your potential slide and starting to see how the scale of each of these subcategories and reallocating
enough.
our resources enough to each one, as well as how much dry powder and reserves we have available to back these up.
And
Yep.
also to quantify how much we want of each, there may be more than we dare to bite off on one of these, so getting those limits in place too, so. That leads to how do we pay for it, and right now we've got ample borrowing capacity, because that's where it's going to come from. There's not the state giving us $20 million for any particular purpose that I see in the future, so borrowing maybe, and we have our own sources outside of that too. So we think we have plenty of available liquidity to grow. And whether we're talking, they're all very specific. We've got energy funding. We talked about some more LIAC funding from the state potentially in relation to the housing, further discussions there. And the state's moral obligation support, we have not requested any further assistance in many years there. The state has the ability to do considerably more if they chose. So I think we have access, and it's just a matter of defining how much risk we want to take with this.
What's the LIAC acronym?
LIAC is the Local Investment Advisory Committee, which oversees the 10%, now 15% in Vermont.
Is it 15?
On the way.
Program. So the state is able to invest 10% of its average cash balances into economic development, housing development type of projects, and that coffer had grown significantly during COVID and was a lot more available. It's come down a bit, but there's still quite a bit out there. We have 20 million of those funds right now, specifically different projects, but it sounds like there's going to be another offering here potentially for some more funding. We'll definitely do what we can to take advantage of it.
I want to make a quick comment about the Steve's question. So obviously, so we're in early stage about these new initiatives or opportunities. But as a kind of a street intelligent, talking with the bank partners about the VEDA able to do the housing especially, they're pretty excited about it. And then obviously we would be kind of a project that we want to be part of. But they're pretty, overall, the sense that I'm getting is they're pretty excited that the VEDA can do the commercial housing part of it. So stretch the, financing a little bit, not maybe up to 90% that we typically do for other projects, but maybe banks can do only like 75%, maybe they stretch to 80 or 85% overall financing, so that would be valuable contribution by VEDA.
And so the level of earnings piece of that, as we embark in what may be more risky, likely more risky activity, we have to be sure to not lose that capital off the back end with significant losses. So the way to handle that is to earn a little bit more every year too. And we'll see a little bit later that in the past, we haven't really focused that much on our losses. You know, past several years, it's been all about capital growth of getting SSBCI money out the door. And we haven't had widespread losses, but they are there. And I want to make sure we understand that the earnings that we're showing are not straight, just cash flowing in to us. There is loss coming out the other side. So make sure we're managing that risk as best as possible. And then the overhead comment is the next 5 or 10 years, where did we see ourselves and our staff and our systems? And I think, as we've said, we're investing into both of those and plan to heavily going forward. And I think we can grow without significant overhead increases. And what that really means is getting more efficient with the people we have and bringing on systems that help us do that. Depending on how these programs take off, there may certainly be a need to add more staff with specific expertise in different areas, and we're willing to do that, definitely.
But yeah, you remember where ROA is at today?
ROA today for this year, we're expecting it to be 54, so 0.54. So the idea, and that's a comfortable number for us. We don't want to fall below that. So I think this goal of 75 is kind of to bridge that gap and taking on more risk and just more ability to absorb it.
Thank you.
Yep. No, we saw this last year too, just show the capacity we have. This was just an example, but we put on 120 million in new debt. And what that does to us over the next 13 years now, I guess. So does increase leverage, but still well below what our policy allows us to do. And really that's our goal here on a mission basis, is to deploy that capital and leverage it as best as you can to have the most impact without taking undue risk. So have the ability to do all of these things within these. So the 4 initiatives kind of on my end, they're all interwoven here, but the first we said is stabilize margins. We've had some pretty big swings up and down in the past 6 years, with a lot of it's due to interest rates, but others due to our own internal policies with pricing. So stabilize our margins to make sure we have that core earnings every year to support losses and continue growing capital. The second is the portfolio management. We do a very good job on the front end when we're looking at loans, and the result of that is low losses. But we want to be able to see the portfolio as a whole and really see where those pockets are. With the losses we've had in the last couple of years, got not a large number of loans, but large losses in those. So it's situations where we're the subordinate lender, we have collateral that's hard to recover, or different characteristics just to be able to see on an aggregate level would be very helpful, along with just monitoring our larger customers and ones with more risk involved. Third is, as we've seen this morning, expand the ability to meet the need. And what else can we do while still managing our core offerings that we have here? Fourth, again, invest in our staff. We talked a lot about training, but also career progression and succession planning within VEDA. Make sure our folks are able to step up to the next level when opportunity arises. So just a little bit of detail here. I don't have to read all of this, but the point is, we discounted our rates significantly in order to get this $30 million of SSBCI funding out the door. That was the condition. Once it was lent, it was ours. So we've seen with other government programs, you don't want to waste time waiting to get it out. So we're ahead of almost every other state in employment rate. We're recycling back, but that means to grow, we need to borrow money. And at 4.5% to borrow, if our rate says here 5.68 was our average new loan rate. That spread is very thin, and it's able to cover costs for us because we have 60 million of equity in the portfolio. So not all of our loans are backed by debt. However, if we grow, that margin continues to shrink, and there does reach a point where it doesn't cover our costs enough to also absorb losses. So we want to make sure we're not going backwards over time. Next. First SSBCI's quick history lesson was $13 million, and most of that was given back to borrowers through significant discounts. We were doing loans at 2% for a time, and that was great, but that was a one-time use of those funds versus a perpetual recycling. So I think a little different philosophy this time. We want to keep that capital within VEDA, continue to lend it out, but not discount to the point where we're actually losing money and letting that capital flow out. We looked at various other programs and other subordinate lenders, and we think we can still be the needed source of capital while earning appropriate revenue for the risk that we take. And again, we'll continue to look at this, and if we get to a point for some reason where we're comfortably hitting margins, we can look at reducing rates to help out. You know, ultimately, we want borrowers to be healthy themselves, and we're not looking to overcharge. Risk management side, as I mentioned, just looking at what data we collect at the front end and during the life of the loan. We have a lot of covenants we build into loans. Some are actionable, most probably aren't, but we still want to have a good idea of where people are and giving us the information they need, or are they meeting their targets. So setting that process up, we've got Jennifer as an intern doing a great job kind of scouring back through files and bringing forward some information and setting up that process to make sure we're on top of our largest customers and identifying those highest risk relationships where the loan may only be $1 million or 800,000, but that whole amount is gone if something happens. So figuring out where those are, we have a lot of large relationships, but there's no risk. So less time to spend there than on higher risk of loss. And to that end, bringing the workout function more into the fray. Pete has the expertise, been here with us for a long time and knows how things go when something does go south. So I think to have that in mind on the front end a little bit, just so we can say, oh, this deal has leasehold improvements as collateral. We're in good shape when we make the loan, but let's acknowledge that if this does go bad, we're going to lose everything. And that's okay. But it's still going to make the loan, but at least have an idea of where those risks are. So a lot of knowledge and experience to gain there. So on these slides, they're in the packet if you want to take a look, but just shows our overall portfolio in the blue and then the charge off. You can see that there was a spike in the charge offs in the last 2 years. And again, a lot of that is limited to a small number of loans, but when we did have a loss, it was significant total for most of what we had out there. And not to say that we're going to prevent those, it's part of why we're here, but to have some foresight into what may happen so we can be prepared and not surprised. So just that overall average loss, $830,000 a year when we look at what we expect for our net earnings a year between 1 and 2 million. Before that is accounted for, much of that goes away. So it shows up as a large number, but we don't include charge-offs directly in there. It's built into our provision. Anyway, so each portfolio is listed here. They all have different characteristics of growth and credit performance. Commercial is the one that saw the biggest hit this year, mostly in manufacturing type organizations. Yeah.
God, is it okay on that last slide if some of us see a dinosaur?
Wish it was upside down.
Toddler drawing.
Brontosaurus, yeah.
Yeah.
What do you see here?
Kind of a camel.
On an upside down brontosaurus. So the ag portfolio, we talked about how a lot of that has been in a troubled status, just in terms of either bankruptcy or significant credit challenges. But when you look at the actual realized losses, it's the lowest portfolio we have, and that's because of real estate values really allowing us to stretch these out, get out of bankruptcies and other real troubles relatively unscathed. We had one large loss last year that was a bankruptcy result, but overall 0.15%, $128,000 a year on $85 million portfolio. Really good. So we're happy with that. The new volume coming on much stronger too. We're not doing the receivable trade debt refinances that we did at one point. So credit quality is strong. Next. So small business tends to follow commercial quite a bit. Those are placed mostly on funding source or entity. So we'd like to combine commercial and small business at some point, just because they are really the same entities by and large. So three is what we talked about as it ties into property redevelopment. And you can see there that not a lot of activity, but when there's a hit, it's a big one. And that was one of our last year major hits, because these RDCs, they have no capital of their own usually. They build a building for a tenant with the end goal of the tenant buying that building at some point in the future. So we lend mostly based on the tenant. And if the tenant goes, the RDC is not able to support it. And we don't push hard and foreclose on those entities if we can help it at all. So we usually end up taking a beat on those. And hasn't been that much activity in that bucket recently. So hopefully we want to encourage it, but on stronger deals with high probability of success. So what we talked about, different offerings. A few of these we've talked about already. First one here, a guarantee program. I've said this a few times, just by looking at what other states do. It is an alternative to SBA, and if they continue on the current path where they're making things more difficult, then this may be something we're asked for more often. And it doesn't involve us funding loans with our own cash. We're on the hook for it for sure, but we have a reserve that's a small percent of the overall balance, so it doesn't require us to outlay all this capital and borrow money and make loans, but we can still have the same impact. So something to consider. It's not going to replace what we do by any means. Participation in bank loans is same idea. It's a little more efficient way to do what we do. Looking at stretching out rates and terms, there's ways to do that as well if we decided we wanted to, and these housing projects may have a need for a 20-year fixed rate term. So how do we accomplish that? Andy and I have talked to Farmer Mac recently. They have some programs for the stronger ag customers that we may not have much access to now, that we could at least provide that loan. It would get sold, or we would get the servicing, some of the servicing income. The early stage program we've talked about, so we and other fee generating activities. I wish we could do more bonds. The activity hasn't been that great, but that was always a great way for us to play a role, make some good fee income, and not have a huge amount of capital outlay. And we've seen a couple RFPs now for affiliate programs, some just for our underwriting services, some to manage a portfolio. So finding those relatively small but still good fee opportunities for us.
Can I ask a question?
Yes.
Can you go back a little bit? For the SBA like guarantee program concept, would you have criteria on who you would allow like to be partners with? Because you'd have to make sure that they are underwriting to your standards?
Yeah, I think it would be similar to, talking out of my ear here, but most of the SBA had a preferred lender program. We have a good relationship with all the community banks in Vermont. I think we'd be pretty comfortable there with a set list of criteria that as long as those were followed, it could be a relatively quick process. So that's seen a lot in other states.
Yeah, I mean, we'd have
We have a VCAT program, which has been out there for many years, and we also have done participation loans in the past, so it's not a new concept for VEDA, but we just haven't.
ECAP has not been pushed by us because it's very not in our benefit to do so, but yeah, there's similar programs and ways to do things.
But we haven't, the point is, we've been
We've done it
working with
before.
banks like that
Sure.
for years, and it's just an expansion of that.
Yeah.
Which I think is
for a guarantee program, yes, we would need to, kind of have some sort of preferred lender or, and guidelines as to what the terms would be, what percentages, what we're looking for
Essentially follow
in the
our-
loan itself, kind of like the SBA
And
does.
it's almost look at the SBA, we've got some of the pain points that
Exactly.
definitely increase our risk, like
Exactly.
the foreign ownership.
Yeah, if you looked at our loan criteria right now, that we make our own loan under those circumstances, and they're more. The banks aren't taking those loans at that level, so wouldn't increase risk by doing.
That's great, and I would love to see more participation. I know I've been very vocal about that.
So we looked at, I know all the folks at these peer programs, mostly through SSBCI, we kind of all got together and talked about things along the way, and two other states that have done very well there was New Hampshire and Maine. So the Business Finance Authority in New Hampshire don't do a whole lot of direct lending themselves, mostly loan guarantees, and they do have a small gap program. Just to emphasize, when they do make loans, the pricing is not cheap. So it's always above the bank. And they've also done some of these public-private partnerships similar to the land development, where they will issue a bond. They do a couple large ones for $20 million plus to buy and fit up a piece of real estate for a strong tenant or group of tenants. So a couple examples there. Maine is similar. They call it commercial loan insurance, essentially the same thing. They did 44 million of that last year and only $4 million in actual loans. And when they make loans, their loans are prime +2, which is right now be at that cap of 8%. So just good to see what other folks are doing, good examples. What can we learn from them? And Mass Development is bigger organization of a lot of different things going on, but they have their enhancement program at the bank's loan rate +2% with a 1% fee, both very much above what we're doing. Mortgage insurance program, and they do have a venture debt fund. I don't know the size of that. I didn't think for that point, but just to see the terms that are out there, prime plus 2.25 to 3.5 is very cheap. That's under 10% ish right now compared to 15 that Karen was saying. So that is where I believe we would want to land to be comfortable. But same thing, 5 to 7 year term, a lot of interest only, warrant coverage. So different than we're used to, but I think with the right amount of bring these folks in. How are they doing? What's their experience? There's a lot of places to learn. We're not reinventing any wheels here, and we get the right guidance. And the last one is, said this, investing in our staff. We're trying to centralize our annual review process. Our payroll providers are a pretty robust system that allows us to do all that in the same place and really track goals and scratch the surface of it a bit this year, but trying to find the best way to make sure we're tracking things. How much training has everybody had? We want to have a plan for everyone within the departments so they have a good idea of where they want to go and how to get there. And I think we've done a good job here of bringing people up through the ranks whenever possible, and just want to continue that, have good succession plans across the organization. So another long-term goal, but piece by piece, we're getting. I didn't have a lot of fun pictures in my house.
No.
The baby cow always gets more interaction. I know. But. So, sorry. Concern, yes.
A question about the last point about the efficiency and focusing on technology, dealing with efficiency. And I'm remembering back, this may be old news, but like $10,000 loan modifications or something. I'm imagining lots of small documentation heavy things and trying to imagine where the return on our largest expense, which is our people, our resources, where that comes from. I'm not sure technology might necessarily deal with that. So without kind of straight arming a customer subset, thinking about, like a retail versus wholesale or commercial versus retail, you give your better overnight rates or something to, large accounts, and you understand that it's going to be more intensive for some of the retail customers to price that. Am I just remembering old stuff and we're already not doing that? Or will technology truly solve all that? Or do we need to segment customers and build it into pricing? If not, because strategy is also sometimes saying no to certain things. Do we just say, no, we don't do a $5,000 advance that would require all this documentation?
That's the constant battle we have here in balancing mission with economics. We don't want to be, there is a source of the $5,000 to $10,000 loan, and it's not us, it's community capital. There's others doing that, so we haven't, I don't think, put any strict minimums or we can't do this, especially in the ag portfolio, a lot of tension, but we're the primary relationship lender, so it's expected. I think the efficiency we hope to come from the time spent on tasks, whether it's new loan write-ups, time spent for every aspect of what we do. So, there's no delusion that AI is going to come in and do half of our work for us. But I think looking at each process to see what are we doing, how long does it take, how long should it take? We've got good metrics in the banking system as a guide to look at all of our processes and determine where the time help to be more value added. And that's obviously the generic speak, but it's going to have to be in process improvement. And we're going to keep doing the same things and probably more things with the same.
But I mean, I have not seen that we had a more expensive price for a smaller loan. I have not seen that. In fact, I think we have the opposite.
Yeah.
Right, over 500,000, it's
We have a floor of 5% if it's 500,000 or under, where it's a 6% over.
yeah. So it's actually.
I'm not a banker, so
Yeah,
there's
yeah.
so much I don't know,
No,
but
but-
in other businesses,
No, yeah.
in other businesses, strategically, you want
Yeah,
to look at
you're
customer
absolutely-
classes, and there's some customer
Yeah.
classes that are not only more profitable, but are leading you strategically where you want to go.
Yeah.
And then there's other customer classes that if you try to make them happy, you're just going to create hell for yourself.
Well, I mean.
And generally speaking, we don't make a lot of small loans of those
Well,
kinds of
yeah.
loans. There might be, we approved a loan and I don't know, budget came back a little higher and we're increasing
Yeah.
it before it's closed.
Tomorrow.
That's,
Yeah.
right, there's that kind of increase.
Yeah.
I mean, I haven't seen, like in my 1 year here, I haven't seen many that were below 50,000.
Right.
Okay.
In general,
in
we don't have
general.
a policy, but we as loan officers will send them.
Send them
to
Yeah,
coaches.
elsewhere.
Depends, if we see it, like,
Yeah.
that we can do it quickly and
I
has
think that
potential
answers my
to grow
question.
into something else.
Yeah.
Or we just don't like it.
Yeah.
Especially if it's a standalone loan. If we've got $1 million relationship and they need a
Yeah.
$30,000 tractor, on a farm, we'll help with that and that makes sense. But if it's
All right.
just the
It's
tractor,
covered, it sounds like.
yeah, then we're not apt to do
The
it.
floor is funny though, that did strike me as odd, the lower the loan, you're getting a lower rate than the higher the loan.
Well, I think,
you're
yeah,
getting a
Mission-
higher
We
rate.
were-
I
we were-
think that was a
it's also
market.
Balancing how
That was
much we could
market.
absorb on the interest rate, given we could impact a larger number
Yeah.
of borrowers while giving up less margin, total margin. or
We
total-
all struggle with this as a
Yeah.
bankers because there's some thought to if you don't offer the product, even though it's not profitable. Now, if you're not offering a terrible example, but an auto loan to someone buying their car for the first time and they go somewhere else.
Yeah.
If you don't offer,
Yeah.
you know, first time home buyer product. So you gotta get them into your business to then be able to offer the life cycle of products from a banking standpoint, not necessarily.
Yeah, but if I'm a real deadbeat and I come to you and I want an auto
Yeah.
loan, you actually will do your business a favor by sending me to somebody else. So,
Maybe.
so send the bad ones
Yeah.
elsewhere.
Maybe, but we do
Okay.
try to price those higher.
Yeah.
But when you're talking about small dollar loans.
Yeah, you can't
don't
spend-
make any
you can't
money
get-
on it no
yeah,
matter
yeah.
what. And I guess that's you wanna
Okay.
try to get them early enough,
That's.
so you get the loans that you want in their life cycle too.
But Dad, you have that data point, right? Like how many of our loans are
Yeah, I
less
think
than?
like 75% of our loans are under $200,000 or something like that. So we have, the population is a lot of smaller loans.
Maybe
You
not
can't-
by relationship.
But and is that current balance versus origination?
Either way, we're putting new loans on all the time.
Yeah.
Take on the old ones, so. But in reality, if we were profit motivated, we charge small loans 12% and the large loans 5%, would be better off. That's not what we're.
But also, it is also constrained slightly by, our IRP funds, which make up not an insignificant part of our small business portfolio. Our cost of capital there is 1%. And we can't make $5 million loans with that money. So there is some
Yeah.
Logic behind it.
Behind it.
From a consumer perspective, though, you're on the outside, so you don't know the inside scoop. And what a consumer, I think, or a customer, I should say, wants is to be treated in the same way that a like customer would be treated. And it's hard when you find out, oh, they got a better deal because they whined more, or because they were part of this special group, or you got charged what the market would bear rather than what was fair with other. So I just think it's really important for any organization to realize that to the extent you can, equity has to be brought into play. That doesn't mean that you won't have different pricing. Of course you will, because you've got customers that cost a lot more to deal with than others in many, many ways. But it's an easy way to lose trust if people find out that they're being treated the way they are because they could be.
Agreed. We have a risk element and the industry element, really, and none of those are really subjective. So you're either a good credit risk that improves your pricing, or you're in the policy of the state driven. Really, so there's no other way where we just say, well, like you're gonna cause us this much work, so we're gonna charge you more. That's not part of our.
It's surprising how often that doesn't happen in business, and it's disconcerting.
With that, you spoke about the ag loans being saved by real estate values. One thing that I found scary is talking to the Cornell professors. The kids graduating Cornell do not want to become farm owners. They want to come manage on a farm. They get paid well for it and not take the risk of ownership. So as this next generation of farmers, I think probably 4 farms in Madison County, they'll buy up every lawn they find, but they don't, that may work for this generation, but is the next generation going to keep buying land? So will the values as farmland gradually decrease? Are they all going to become residential or commercial? I don't see commercial happening really. And how much more housing are our employees or whatever going to want to buy at $600,000?
Would say residential is pretty hard in Madison County.
Yeah.
Takes 3 to 6 years to subdivide lots to build, with lakeshore protection, wetlands,
Yeah,
impervious surface over 1 acre. You want me to keep going?
Yeah, you.
No, I just state's cost encumbered by, deed restrictions.
Right now, we have several more interesting presentations to come, and some of it will inform the conversation we're having now. I'd suggest we take a 15-minute break, get back at 2:45. And if we finish a little earlier this afternoon, it's a beautiful day, and we'll get to let's be back here in 15 minutes.